The deeper I am in the ecosystem, I think the original sin here for Web3 gaming and why so many are collapsing is actually the investment model. So we're at this weird place where Web3 native games for the last few years have been able to raise at these crazy high valuations, but it's required that the game has a token in it, and that token is the exit liquidity for the VCs. Meanwhile, most of these games, because of sentiment in mainstream gaming, are having a lot of trouble just raising as a game's business. So there's a high dependency on crypto VCs, Web3 native VCs, who require the games to put a token in it, and that token gives them exit liquidity. My personal thesis, as I've seen more and more of this, is like, while this is the funding mechanism, while your in-game tokens are also what you're using to raise VC money, and often that is dumped on the market before the game is even launched, it's going to be largely a non-starter for that profile of games. I invite you guys to shoot down my thesis, give your own diagnosis, like what is causing the high fail rate of Web3 native or Web 2.5 games that is causing this negative sentiment that we're seeing?
Well, I think from a VC perspective, you're kind of nailing an inherent issue there. If you've got this entity that's going to invest a sizable amount into the production of a game, and they've gamified a way to extract all of that and then some, a very early stage in these games doesn't really leave much of the pie left for the general user. And I think the general gaming community is getting pretty sick of this model.
Yeah. Matt, Jerry, what do you see like when you look at that pile of dead corpses of failed Web3 games? What are some of the common themes you've seen in those that have failed?
Yeah, I think the primary issue is definitely launching the token without a game. The thesis behind a game having a token is for the token to have sinks and people being able to use the token as a utility to kind of like use in the game, purchase things, assets, whatever you want to call it. It's supposed to power essentially the game because it's a Web3 game, right? That's what the whole point of Web3 is. But the problem is that at the moment, this is quite a controversial topic, but I heard in the grapevine that some VCs are referring to these tokens as like they are the product. The games are not the product, the tokens are. So I think this is the problem inherently, which is what the VCs just want is kind of like the TGE and then, you know, put it on the best exchange that you can get listed on and give us that liquidity. And that's kind of the game for some people. Obviously, we're never going to get to mass market if that's all we do ever.
Right.
I would love to see like a case study on a game not launching the token until the game is fully out and in market.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
Take on that, Matt, because it's kind of like VCs are almost like movie production studios, and rather than trying to make a great movie, they just want a really great trailer to get people in theaters, you know?
Yeah, we've actually shot down a ton of potential engagements here at Uptick because we talked to teams that are specifically looking for a marketing agency to launch their token and have no interest in, well, we don't need you after that. It's like, well, what about launching your actual game? It's like, to me, that's like the reddest of red flags for a team of like, if the mission ends when the token goes live. Jerry, what are your thoughts on what's causing the trends in those Web3 games that have failed?
Yeah, World of Warcraft didn't launch just the auction house before the game was around it, right? You know, and the economy and trading isn't there with an actual game behind it. What can you do? And you can do nothing with these tokens for the most part, except for buy and sell, right? And when people have a lot of them and see that they're not doing well, they're not going to buy it, right? They're just going to sell it. So the only thing you're giving people opportunities to even do with it is trade it, which means it needs to have a ton going for it to be going up in price. So it's been overall, like for the consumer, a pretty bad model. I see why VCs love it, right? Because they can get their money back regardless of how the game does, and they can make a ton of money doing it. When you then zoom in on that even further, why they're attracted to meme coins right now, because there doesn't need to be a product, right? There just needs to be some funny posts that are going out on Twitter. Yeah, I think it's overall been something that's been put into these games in a half-baked way, following a game that's just not in the place that it needs to be. But we're seeing some good examples of teams who are doing it right. Like there's a token that just dropped. It's only a couple days old. Pirate Nation, right, had a game, built a community up, had people playing it. There's a ton of people playing the game every day. And they gave you some options of what to do with that token immediately, right? From the moment you went and claimed it, you could do something with it. And everybody did that. Everybody went and staked it. And you can use it to help you in game now. And that token is a couple days old. It is absolutely flying in a market where we've seen tokens that get launched just immediately start to go down. Parallel, I think, would be another good example. You know, people can say what they want about Parallel as a trading card game. I think it's pretty good for the state that they're at. You know, people treat it like it's a full release game. It's definitely not that, right? But for the stage that they're at, they have some things you can do with the token as well, and very high value token, and seems to do well every time it gets some attention. You know, there's a ton of people watching it all the time. It's one of the most traded gaming tokens we have.
Yeah, well, Parallel's doing a great job, fantastic job on their side. I'd like to call out DraftKings on what they're doing as well. But a disclaimer on all this is that we still don't have mass adoption into Web3 yet. The vast majority of people are very resistant to it. And that's a blocker for everything that we're trying to get done in Web3, right? Something needs to crest over that, or people need to bring their own audience. And that's why I think that DraftKings is doing such a great job with their Rainmaker program. Built-in audience, right? People have been using the platform for years. It's not a big leap between gambling in sports on a daily basis and participating in a fantasy sports style product in the NFT world. Very easy to change people over into that. They're crushing it. I mean, they're number one volume on Polygon, have been for 2 years straight now. The problem is that that model is not very duplicatable because they brought in that audience, existing audience that they had loyalty, and it's a product that's a very, very short variance between what they're already selling. We have some winners already. It's just, we don't have winners that can check mark all the boxes of the general ecosystem being able to develop games that people can use yet.